It's either I get washed out or the background is shit. No, it's not gonna work out. Hello and welcome back to Between Two Pumpkins, a basic bitch's guide to Halloween. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannoween, aka The Woman in Wool, and on this channel we crochet and we talk history. Why? Because true crime and makeup is oversaturated. I am just kidding. It is because in 2016 I moved from New York into Ireland, and ever since then I have made it my mission to learn and absorb as much as I can about my new little country. For those of you just tuning in for this one episode, I do a series called Hannoween every October as of last October, where I break down the Irish origins of Halloween. So, welcome back to Hannoween, the series where I tell you that everything that you know and love about Halloween is in fact Irish. Now, this video is actually, I did this last year, and then I did a second one on Irish creatures as well. But this Hannoween is a little bit different because I'm not doing the creatures one anymore. I really wanted to do the history of Samhain, so this is my kind of second iteration of the Samhain history video that I did last year. But this year, actually, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm doing a cosplay costume element to my Hannoween. So the first half of Hannoween is the history and the Celtic ancient paganism part of it. And then the second half is more cosplay, and I'm excited to announce what it is and what you should be expecting. I have been working since July on costumes, and I got the idea in July. I was just kind of making something. I was up late as usual, and I got this idea. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if someone did like a 1970s accurate like Scooby-Doo costume, like bell bottoms, crochet? And then I was like, I could probably do that. Especially since there was a lot of crochet in the 70s, so I did some digging and I could theoretically do everything to make these costumes. Odie, knock it off. No. And so I did some preliminary sketches and digging and research and stuff like that. Then I realized I could actually do that. So Scooby-Doo was first aired in September of 1969, and I have recreated the Scooby-Doo costumes with that year in mind, 1969. It was a big year for the States. We went to the moon for the first time. Woodstock happened, and Sharon Tate was murdered. So that actually, it might not seem like that was like a big event, but that actually inspired a little bit of the costume as well. So I'll get into it in another video. I'll break down everything. Right now, you want to talk about Samhain, and I'm here to serve. But before that, I just wanted to explain why this video is just the one video this year and not the two videos with the creatures as well, as because I was working on a 1969 reproduction of Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Dooby-Dooby-Doo, which I am probably frantically editing right now because I film in like 3 days, and right now Fred's jumper is just pieces of fabric on the floor. Chaos? Woohoo! What? Me? No. Now, without any further ado, let's grab the crochet and let's talk about Samhain. I've got my apple cinnamon tea in my ASMR. In my Halloween mug. I've got my jack-o'-lantern skirt, so let's get started. Now, if you like what you see and you want to follow along for more, I am on Instagram, TikTok, and here on YouTube. I also think I have a LinkedIn page. Don't follow me on LinkedIn, that's bullshit. But without further ado, let's start making Daphne's headband. Give me Daphne colors, haha. And let's jump into Samhain, or the history, Irish Celtic history of Halloween. So in order for this to make sense, we have to turn back the clock very far back, before the Vikings, before the Anglo-Normans, before the English. So this was around 1100 and before. Actually, I think the Vikings came before that. I think they came around 1000, the year 900 to 1000. So this might have even been before the year 900. As you can tell, I'm not an expert on Celtic religion or Celtic mythology by any means. So when I say dates, these are kind of rough because I've heard several sources do other things, but not everything was written down, so I have a hard time finding original sources and things like that of this nature. But this was before Christianity came into the islands, so at least before the year 1100. But if you are an expert on Celtic ancient mythology and paganism, please do comment below. I would love to get together at some point, but I'm not going to be pretending that I'm an expert in this by any means. All I want to do is explain the Celtic Irish origins of Halloween, and to do so, I do have to talk about Celtic paganism and the season change holiday of Samhain, or the season change festival of Samhain. So I expect there to be corrections in the bottom on the minutia of Celtic paganism or the religion of the time. I don't often know exactly why they were done the way they would do. I have my best guesses and I have what I've researched, but obviously if you know more detail about the mythology and the dogma surrounding these practices, please do comment below because I'd love to hear them. So before Christianity came into play in Ireland, obviously Celtic paganism was at its highest, and that was kind of the foundation religion of the land. I assume there were differing beliefs slightly in different areas, much like the native beliefs of the Americas. But again, I haven't found anything that confirms or denies that. Now, with the Celtic paganism, there were certain season change festivals that took place, and there were 4 of them, obviously, because there are 4 seasons. You can hear the construction in the background. I'm very sorry, but there is one day and one day only to get this video done, so we're just gonna have to fix that in post. People are weed whacking a building, it sounds like. Anyway, these season change festivals aligned with the different seasons, and here they are in a calendar form so that you can take a look at them yourself, but the one that we're going to be talking about today welcomes the winter in from the fall, and that was called Samhain. It's spelt Samhain, it's not Samhain. You can't call it that, or else the Irish people will beat you up. And so Samhain was welcoming the winter in from the fall. Now you might be thinking, well, Hannah, Halloween, October 31st, that's not winter. November into December would be winter. That's true outside of Ireland. Inside of Ireland, it followed a different schedule, and it followed the weather of specifically Ireland. And when the Irish of old found that the weather changed the most was from October into November, into the dark half of the year. So even though our winter solstice is on December 21st, and that marks the first day of winter officially, winter in Ireland begins at the beginning of November. So right after Samhain. So right after Halloween, winter starts. That's the seasons in Ireland. And you'd be surprised how many grown-ass Irish people don't know that. They're like, wait, what? And I was like, well, you know, like seasons are different in Ireland. They're like, they are? So when does spring start? Like, they get all panicked. They're like, when does spring start for you? And I'm like, March. In America, it's in March. They're like, but St. Bridget. And we'll get to St. Bridget. Don't you worry about that. But just to let you know, St. Bridget is an Irish goddess who then became a saint. So why would America follow? Anyway, it's a whole bone to pick with the grown-ass Irish people who are literally 35 years old who did not know that their seasons were different. It's like a truly shocking experience for them to learn that nobody celebrates winter in November. So these season change festivals like Samhain or Bealtaine or any of the other ones you see up on screen. Now, thanks editing, Hannah.
No problem.
They were celebrated at a different time than what the rest of the world would have been doing on solstices and measuring the shortest day of the year. They had it more like a farming calendar, or like an agricultural and weather type calendar, and it made sense for the ancient Irish agriculture at the time. And another thing about Samhain, which is the origin holiday of Halloween and where we get brought into the winter, is that it would usher in what was called the dark half of the year. From my understanding, Celtic pagans had 2 different parts of the year. One was the light half and one was the dark half, obviously. So spring and summer would be the light half, autumn into winter, or really winter into spring would be the dark half, and then spring into autumn would be the light half, I suppose. And so Samhain would have taken place on October 31st into November 1st. And it not only took care of the darkness or ushered in the dark half of the year, it also venerated the dead, which we see a lot of in other kind of cultural death festivals. So like Dia de Muertos in Mexico is the big one that comes to mind all the time, right around November 1st, October 31st. And that is another day to venerate the dead. And that is interesting and also kind of obvious, because when you're moving into the dark half of the year or into the autumn, the earth itself appears to be dying. It's time to harvest before the ground dies, your crops are going to die, etc., etc. So a time to venerate the dead would be when everything around you is dying. And Samhain was a holiday in order to do that. And it wasn't just an Irish holiday, it is mainly an Irish holiday, but it's actually a Celtic holiday, which means that other Celtic nations like Scotland, Wales, parts of England, Cornwall, Isle of Man, and parts of France would also have been celebrating Samhain, or the word for it in their language, because they had their own languages. And I know that the Welsh speakers have told me this before last year, but I am forgetting the name of it in Welsh, but I will put it up here. Thanks, editing, Hannah. And that was a big deal in the Welsh and Scottish and Cornwallian calendars as well. But what was interesting is last year when I was doing this series, a lot of Scottish people came out of the woodwork and started telling me that they still do the things that I'm about to talk about in Scotland today. And so on this day that venerated the dead, and on the day that, you know, the dead were recognized and seen the most because the earth was dying, would be the day when the dead came to visit the land of the living. So from my understanding, and like I said, the dogma and the minutiae of the specific beliefs of Celtic paganism are not my expertise. Obviously, nothing's my expertise. I'm not an expert in anything. Good time to point that out. From my understanding, the world of the living and the world of the dead started to come together on this day. And I posted something saying like the veil between the world of the living and the dead was at its thinnest. But the way it was explained to me, somebody commented on my video that it wasn't necessarily a veil, and that the veil between the worlds was always thin, but on Samhain the veil would be kind of almost gone entirely because of this kind of crossover. But you have to understand that Irish folklore and mythology very much is one and the same with the other worlds. So there are other worlds. There's the world of Tirnog, there's the fairy world, there is the world of other creatures, there's the world of the dead. All of these other worlds kind of come together, one and the same a lot of the time, but on Samhain specifically, the dead could come and kind of haunt the world of the living in a stronger sense. And if you know the details behind that, or if you know the specific reasons or things that would happen, or why this was the case, please do let me know. But from my understanding, this was a day when the dead could walk among the living. And like I said, in Ireland, this kind of relationship with the magical, the mystical, the other is very close and is still alive and well today. And I've had friends and relations tell me that like they've had experiences with this other realm and these other creatures, and that they're skeptics. They don't necessarily like believe in whatever mystical, magical nonsense there is. Not nonsense, but but that they have had experiences with things like these creatures and the other worlds and that kind of thing, and the fae and the fairies and all that. And the kind of relationship between the fae and the other world and the dead moving into the world of living is kind of the quintessential energy, and the intent behind Samhain is this kind of meshing of the dead with the alive. Now, topic 1, fire. Now, in the spirit of a season change festival, obviously there would be certain traditions that took place, and using fire was in and amongst these traditions. And I say fire because this was a darkness kind of holiday and practice. This was ushering in the dark part of the year. The big thing to do was to bring fire into it, or to bring light into the darkness. It's a very common thing I see, and I'll get into it in a second, but during Samhain there would be huge bonfires. Now, I don't know if there's dancing around the bonfire like in the movies about paganism and stuff like that, but I can only assume and hope that there was crazy ass dancing around the fire. Were they naked? Who's to say? Not me. And it's even said that the word bonfire is kind of an Irish term, or comes from the Irish in this sense, because of these huge fires that were burned on Samhain, and specifically because there were bones cast into the fire. Bone, fire, bonfire. It kind of came from this practice of casting small creatures' bones into the fire on Samhain as this practice and this veneration for the dead. Is that true? Sure. We're gonna let the pagans have this one. Sure, bonfire comes from the Irish Celtic burning of animals' bones on Samhain. Sure, let's say yes. Not an expert. And the thing is, there would be these huge communal bonfires. People would be casting bones into it. You would also extinguish the fire in your home and then bring fire from the communal bonfire into your home. And obviously this is just hugely symbolic. I think it's very sweet. I think it's very like warming to bring the communal light into your house, because there's this coldness and this darkness encroaching in. The importance of community and sticking together and communal warmth is so important at this time of year, and we seek it out as humans. When things get cold and dark, we like to be around other people. This is why we have gatherings in the winter. This is why, we have parties for Christmas and Hanukkah and Halloween. But during the cold and the dark, you kind of see it as well. Was it cuffing season? The kids call it. It's when you get like a partner or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner on like during the winter, so that you can cuddle up with them and not have to spend it alone. Oh no, human nature is so predictable. Anyway, that's Samhain too. Is cuffing season is Samhain as well. I'm just kidding. That'd be funny. But it is this kind of idea of bringing the fire of the community into your home, lighting and warming your home together. And I did write this down about other winter and autumn festivals bringing light in, things like lanterns, the Hanukkah lights, Christmas tree lights, putting lights on a Christmas tree. The idea of bringing light into the darkness is very popular moving into this time of the year, and I love it. And speaking of light, we will get on to lanterns in just a moment. Just wait right there. Number 2. Costumes. We all love wearing a costume on Halloween. Nowadays, funny ones or sexy ones or ones that look like you or easy ones, they're all kind of together. I found this costume. Now you have to see it too. With the odd person, you know, doing the whole classic monster, ghoul, vampire type of thing. But the original costumes for Samhain were actually just spirits. And mainly you would dress up to make yourself as terrifying and as ghoulish and unrecognizable as possible. And the reason for this is so that the spirits could not recognize you as a human. You see, as close as of a relationship that the Irish people have to and the fairy, it is not necessarily a pleasant relationship that they have, because a lot of the fairies, spirits, ghouls, goblins, monsters, all that fun stuff, all of the kind of creatures that you see in Irish folklore, they're not like the Tinkerbell granting wishes sparkly fairy you've heard about from Disney. Who am I talking to? You guys know. Nobody actually thinks that when they're watching me. But the fairies of ancient Ireland and the spirits of ancient Ireland were almost always, at best, neutral. Like, if they weren't neutral, they were bad and they wanted to cause you direct harm. So the idea that spirits and creatures would wander around on Samhain was actually really terrifying, and you know, people thought that they could get hurt, they could get harmed, they could get dragged back to the world of the dead, they could die themselves, that kind of thing. And by dressing up as a spirit, you could avoid detection and you could go unnoticed by the spirits because you look like one of them. So basically, not wearing a costume on Halloween is as bad of a thing as not wearing green on St. Patrick's Day. You could get pinched by an evil spirit leprechaun. That'll show the party poopers for not wearing a costume. Or like that one person who was like, I'm me for Halloween. You're getting pinched by an evil spirit. Number 3, trick-or-treating. Now I know that the modern iteration of trick-or-treating seems quite new, but it actually comes from this ancient Samhain practice of what's called souling, and we'll get to that. Or we'll get to the new bit, trust me. Samhain had something called souling, and souling was done on Samhain. And on Christmas, we'll get to that in just a second. Christmas used to be really goth. And actually, like I was talking about before, a lot of places in Scotland, especially like rural Scotland and Wales and in Ireland, still do souling instead of trick-or-treating. They have either just continued to do this over the course of time, or they have kind of returned back to it as a way to practice culturally keeping up their ancient cultures. And actually, one of my friend's moms told me that she used to go souling as well, and they would dress up as a puka and like hide. Puka's something different, we'll cover that, but that she would soul instead of trick-or-treat. Now, souling was as follows. Because the dead were coming in to bother the living and to harm the living essentially, and wandering the world of the living, you would go house to house and offer prayers for that family's dead relatives in hopes to appease that family's dead and to keep them from harming them. And in exchange for your prayers, you would get a seasonal treat. And no fun-sized candy bars this time. This seasonal treat was called a soul cake, and it was like a shortbread with spices and dried fruit in it. And obviously it was homemade back before the pixie stick murder fucked everything up. And now you can't make your own Halloween treats. But you would get a soul cake in exchange for your prayers. This way the family did not come into any harm. And then you would get a soul cake. And things like this at the time were kind of rare because things like sugar, spices, and dried fruit were kind of a rarity, a very special thing to have. And so were saved for days that were special and in the colds and would warm you up. And these things were quite good for your immune system too. So in the cold parts of the year, things like cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, cloves, those would be used in cooking to boost your immune system as well. Still had raisins though, which what the fuck. But in the biscuit itself, there would be a cross, and this was done for baking purposes, but later on it took on a more Christian meaning. So that's what you're seeing there. And like I said, it was not just on Samhain that souling was taking place, it was also on Christmas. Because this was a cold, dark part of the year, people would offer prayers as well, and they would get stuff in return, probably money or another treat. And actually in England, this was more common. In Wales, this was very common. They still do it today on Christmas, mostly in Wales, is that they would go around house to house and they would do this. And this is where we think the practice of caroling came from. And so like when you would go house to house and sing a song and, you know, people would yay, clap, offer you money, we think that this came from souling as well. So Halloween and Christmas have this kind of very connected pagan ritualistic connection that they have, obviously. And as we know, Christmas and Halloween both started off as pagan holidays, Halloween being Samhain, Christmas being a solstice holiday. We'll get there. But these kind of, the veneration for the dead, the circle of life, life and death, they're all kind of mixed together in pagan religions and cultures, and they would share certain practices. And souling was one of these practices because during the dark, cold parts of the year, what do you want for yourself? A little warm thought, maybe a nice little prayer for your dead. or for you. And now obviously with trick-or-treating, this has taken on a more American kind of vibe. It's kind of an American phenomenon at the moment. And I will tell you why. Obviously there was periods of mass immigration into America in the 1800s by the Irish. The Irish had been coming for a long time, and they came a long time after that. But back in the mid to late 1800s and into the early 1900s, the Irish came in full force. And Halloween and all of its practices came with them, including something called the jack-o'-lantern, which we will get to in a minute. But when the Irish came into America, obviously they brought Halloween and all of their practices along with them, but the Americans took it and ran because Halloween took on a different kind of vibe. It used to be very Victorian. It used to be that there were Halloween parties and kind of spooky, scary things. But after this came the World Wars, World War I and World War II, and the nation's youth were kind of in this really uncertain state, and they were acting out. Surprise, surprise, right? So vandalism became a big thing. Halloween, after the Victorian era, moving into the World War I, World War II era, became more of a mischief night. Actually, it was called Mischief Night. Wonder why the country's youth could be acting out. Could it be the impending doom that they felt as they watched their fathers, brothers, friends, and family fight off in a war that was far away from them without any certainty of coming back, and the imminent domain that is death encroaching ever closer on their tiny little young lives? Could it be the uncertainty of whether or not war was ever going to end for them? Would they ever escape the non-stop fighting? Could they ever have a shot at a future? I don't think that was it. I think it was probably other stuff. But as a result, things like vandalism, arson, and assault became really prevalent on Halloween. It was always a night for going out, having a party, maybe having a drink or two, but with people drinking more often and the state of the world as it was, young people started to vandalize more. Halloween became a really scary night. And even today, in certain parts of America especially, there are still mischief nights and fire nights, and arson and vandalism are still higher than normal on Halloween night. But there came a time when community groups and local governments decided that they had to change up the kind of vibe of Halloween and the image that Halloween had in the communities, and they had to revamp it and make it more of a family-friendly thing. They started encouraging small businesses and family homes to hand out candy and sweets in order to bring back souling, or trick-or-treating, as it would later be called. And they put on things like local fun fairs, haunted houses, activities for kids all the way up through teenagers, and it became a real family-friendly event. And you know, candy companies started catching on board, encouraging more people to hand out candy instead of vandalizing. So with the vandalism on the rise and homes encouraged to give out candy and start doing the souling thing again, people decided to kind of market it in a way where either you have treats for these kids when they come to your house, or they're gonna vandalize your house. It became a trick or a treat, because mischief night or trick-or-treating. It was kind of up to the community, and most communities chose trick-or-treating. Obviously, Hershey's, Hallmark, even costume stores starting to get a hang of this, started capitalizing on the new and improved Halloween, and now we have fun-sized candy bars and temporary spirit Halloweens that go up every year. Hooray. So while I know that many of you guys who watch my channel kind of long for the olden days of souling and ancient Irish paganism and these kind of old practices, and kind of rue the commercialization of Halloween, and I see the like, look what they've done to my boy kind of like memes that go around, and like the Americanization of Halloween, the Disneyfication of Halloween, you know, kind of, they see it as a negative thing, or you guys see it as a negative thing a lot of the time, and that the like true meaning of Halloween has kind of been lost. But you have to remember that it was kind of like a Disneyfy or die kind of situation. Like, mischief had gotten so high on Halloween. We're talking like burned out cars, house fires, destruction of property, assaults everywhere, and guess on who? It was women. Like, it was either turned into a family fun, shiny holiday, or risk getting your house blown up with the Molotov cocktail. I choose Mickey Mouse in a jack-o'-lantern outfit. That's what I choose. Like, either make Halloween great again, or risk getting your car's tires stolen. Number 4, jack-o'-lanterns. Everyone's favorite. Now, this is not an ancient Celtic pagan ritual. Obviously, this was post-Christianification of Ireland, or Catholification? Anyway, but this was the post-Christian takeover of Ireland in this story. And to know this story, hi buddy, and to know this story, you have to know Jack. Now, Jack was a guy from Ireland. I'm going to tell you the story just kind of freehanded. I haven't written it down because I kind of know it. Now, Jack was a guy from Ireland who was not very great. This is going to be a long story short kind of situation. I could do a whole storytelling thing on Jack, but there's plenty of channels that do that. But Jack was an Irish man who was not great. He was a drinker. He was not a great guy. He was consistently in debt to people and just all around not well liked. So the day came when Jack died, and he was met by the devil, because obviously. And the devil said to him, "You're coming with me. You've been a bad guy, Jack. Stop. And the devil said, "You're coming with me. You've been a bad guy, Jack. You're going to hell." And Jack said, "Oh, that makes sense. But do you mind if I get one more beer first?" And the devil was like, "I could use a beer." So they go to the beer shop. The pub. And so they go to the pub. And when it comes time to pay, Jack says, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it. I left my wallet at home. That's crazy. You got this, right?" And the devil was like, "I don't have any fucking money, dude. I'm not a human being." And Jack says, "Oh, I got it. Turn yourself into a coin. I know you can do that. And then pay with the bartender. And then we will go and you can just change back." And the devil was like, "Smart guy, Jack." And so the devil did that. He turned himself into a coin. Jack picked up the coin. And instead of going to pay the bartender, he just slipped the coin into his pocket, which had a crucifix next to it. And next to the crucifix, the devil could not change back into his normal form. And he was like, "God, Jack." And Jack made a deal. He said, "Give me another 5 years and I'll come with you. And I'll let you go right now." And the devil was like, "I got no other choice. Fine." So Jack, a man of his word, let the devil go. And the devil changed back into himself and says, "I'll get you in 5 years from now." Devil comes back 5 years from now. He's like, "No more tricks, Jack. We're not going to a bar." And Jack's like, "Nope, no bar. It's time to die. Let's go." "I do wish I had an apple." And the devil goes, "Fine, but I'm getting the apple. You sit your ass down there. Don't move." And Jack goes, "Got it, no problem." Devil climbs up the apple tree, wants to grab an apple, and Jack carved a cross onto the side of the tree. At least that's the story I got. Or he wrapped his rosary around it, something like that. But the devil could not get down out of the tree, and he was like, "Oh, you little son of a bitch." And Jack said, "Hey, I don't want to go to hell, dude. Don't take me." And the devil was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Promise me you'll never take me to hell, and I'll let you out of the tree." And devil goes, "Okay." And so Jack lets him out of the tree. The devil comes down, and when it finally comes time for Jack to pass away and to go into the world of the dead, and first he's sent upwards, and he's at the gates of heaven, and the angels are like, "Aha! What are you doing here?" And Jack is like, "Well, can't go to hell. Gotta let me in here." And heaven goes, "No, you're not on the list, sorry." And Jack goes, "Oh shit." So he goes back down to hell. He's at the gates of hell. And the devil goes, "Oh no. A deal's a deal. You're not coming in here either." And Jack quickly realizes what he's done to himself. So the devil, he hands him a lantern. It's a carved out turnip. It's a hollowed turnip with a hole in it to light his way. He puts an ember from the glowing coals of hell into this turnip, and he hands it to Jack. And Jack is forced to wander the earth for all eternity with nothing but this lantern to light his way. And he would be known as Jack of the Lantern, Jack-o'-lantern. And these jack-o'-lanterns were used on Samhain and Halloween to light spirits' ways away from your house. So you would put out jack-o'-lanterns on your porches or on your outdoor areas, and you would move spirits along or attract them away from your house. And you would kind of say, "Oh, there's already a spirit here, Jack's already here." And so these jack-o'-lanterns became synonymous with the celebrations of Samhain, and they were carved out turnips. Now, Ireland still used turnips and continued to use turnips even into great periods of immigration into the United States. But when they went to the United States, they did see something that was a little different. They brought all of their practices from Samhain and Halloween, which was Christianized at this point. We'll get to that. And so the Irish brought all these practices, but there were no turnips in the United States. But they quickly made friends with another oppressed group of people who knew all too well what it was like to be ostracized in your own homeland and to get all of your land taken away from you and to have your religious freedom stripped away. The Native Americans. Or the Native Indians, apologies. I'm not entirely sure which term is the best for which group and who prefers what, so let me know down in the comments. I just want to be informed. And so the Native communities showed the new Irish populations which gourds to use, and that was the seasonal, very ripe at this time of the year, hollow, delicious, beautiful, edible, bright orange, humble pumpkin. And the Irish started to carve out the rest of the pumpkin. You could eat the insides of the pumpkin, you could roast it, and they used to carve their jack-o'-lanterns out of that. And this new hollow gourd became the go-to for jack-o'-lanterns, jack-o'-lanterns. Now, my own conspiracy theory is that this is what's responsible for the pumpkin craze, is this switch over from food into decoration. So like a pumpkin went from just being food and being a seasonal food to a decoration. And like I have this theory because like apples are kind of the same, right? Like sure, they weren't used to as jack-o'-lanterns, and that's the only difference really. Like apples are just as seasonal as pumpkins. We use them in way more cooking. We use them in drakes. We use them everywhere. Like we eat them all the time, and we even go to apple orchards and pick apples just like we would go to a pumpkin patch and pick pumpkins. But because the apple stayed a food and the pumpkin became a decoration with the onslaught of jack-o'-lanterns and the income of jack-o'-lanterns from the Irish, the apple was not a decoration and was not used for decorative purposes, but the pumpkin was, which is why I think the pumpkin craze is so big. Like that's why we think of them differently, is just the Irish and the jack-o'-lanterns, in my opinion. That's a conspiracy theory. Hence, the pumpkin spice latte is Irish American. And I think that we should bring a turnip spice latte into circulation to make it more authentic. And I also want to make merch that says turnip spice latte on it. I know it's so dumb, but like I think that that would be so much fun. Turnip spice latte, woman in wool merch. Our first merch will just big old turnip spice latte on it. Blech. Anyway, how did we get here? I know what you're thinking. Hannah, I know Halloween, now that you've mentioned it, is Celtic and pagan. It was called Samhain. I thought it was Christian and it was All Hallows Eve, and that's why it was called it. It was. As we know, when Christianity comes into a nation, they like to take over that nation's kind of cultural practices. Christianity is very good at that. All new religions tend to do this. They take the old practices of the original religion in a country and they kind of morph it and twist it into the new religion, so this way they can get more converts without losing any kind of nostalgic feelings about other traditions, and the country can keep their traditions while also converting. Like the aforementioned St. Bridget. So when Christianity came into Ireland, Samhain was still a huge deal and was still being practiced yearly and was very important. So what did Christianity do? Essentially, it became a day not just to venerate dead and to honor the changing of the earth and the cycle of nature, but also to venerate dead saints, also known as Hallows. It became All Saints Day, or All Souls Day on November 2nd. So it was All Saints Day on November 1st, All Souls Day on November 2nd. So All Saints Eve, or All Hallows Eve, because another word for saints is hallows, would be on October 31st into November 1st. So All Hallows Eve, Halloween moving forward. So there are Christian roots in Halloween as well, after the pagan original ceremonies of Samhain. Now, we're all caught up on Samhain. Now, I know I did this video last year, and I also did like a creatures video. A lot of the classic creatures you see in like horror movies and stuff like that are of Irish descent as well. Like I said, the Headless Horseman, the vampire, the werewolf, all have Irish roots in them and all come from Irish fae creatures. But I decided not to do that this year because of my cosplay elements that are going to be going on. I've been very busy. If I get time, I will, of course, do a little bit more of a deep dive into Irish creatures if you'd like that. But if you don't, it's also on my channel from last year, so you can check that out there. And if you know anything else that is of Samhain origin that now relates to Halloween, please comment it down below. I know that there's so many elements to go through. It's hard to go through it all in one video, especially when I've broken up Hannoweeen into 2 separate parts. But if you'd like any more details on Samhain and the ancient Celtic pagan roots of Halloween, I'm happy to do a part 2. Or if you just want to hear about Irish vampires, also an option. But still coming are behind the scenes of Scooby-Doo, the Scooby-Doo itself. I haven't even filmed that yet. That's going to be a doozy. And multiple short forms of Scooby-Doo content, and this video and a tutorial on how to make Fred's pants, which you will see soon. But I hope you enjoyed your Samhain Halloween deep dive with me. I hope to do more next year. This has been such an honor. I really appreciate you guys following along. It's sometimes you can get caught up in like comparing yourself to others and trying your best to have like an end goal in mind, but at the same time it's just so nice to like sit and be with the people who are here right now who want to hear about this. So I hope you enjoy your Halloween. I hope you have a great time trick-or-treating or having a party, not vandalizing or burning out cars. And I hope that this tickles that little itch in your brain for something a bit more ancient and witchy on Halloween. So thank you. Have a great day. Like and subscribe, right? And follow along for a 1969 rendition of Scooby-Doo, starring my dog, Scooby-Doo. I did not have access to a Great Dane. We're getting a Jack Russell and we're going to be happy about it. Anyway, happy Halloween, blessed Samhain, happy Hannoweeen, and I will see you at the haunted castle. Love you. Bye. 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 Oh, that's gone cold. Everyone's just having a fucking meltdown out there.